And please be so kind and put the main settings onto gallery view so that we can spotlight the speakers. Yeah, have an exciting talk and discussion. Looking forward.
Hello, everybody. My name is Claudia Bosse. I'm responsible for this talk in a way, and I would like to introduce you a bit in the backgrounds why this happened. And first, I have to mention that we ask for your kind permission that we can record this talk. So we hope it's no problem for you. For us, it would be a quite important document for the ongoing work process. Why it came to these talks. So since last year, a working process started called it Oracle and Sacrifice, which is a performative work which tries to research, I would say, on collective assumptions and rituals, a work process which is questioning the concepts of time between past, future, and the present, and perhaps also which is questioning the concept of cohabitation, coexistence, and also co-living with other entities. This work had the first part in a solo at the stage on Tanzquartier Vienna, and since March this year, this work developed into a bigger production, which is foreseen for the Viennese Woods, which was originally understood to be in this June public in Vienna, but according to the corona conditions, we have to postpone this work for next year. But nevertheless, the working process started already, and we started our explorations with the woods and also in relation to other entities, and also started to think about how we can develop thoughts and also choreographic material in reading other entities. So not just reading books, but taking time and giving attention towards other constellations, so towards plants, and specifically being interested in the complex constellation of a forest. Because in my last explorations, I got so inspired by the forest, because it seemed that the forest is such a complex system of different temporalities and also different circular ecologies, and that there are permanent metabolisms happening which transform every material, so that every matter which is sharing the space becomes a nourisher or also a matter for something else. So that the forest for me understood as a space of permanent transformation. And thinking about this really complex process where we try with a wonderful choir, with a group of performers, and also alliances as researchers, we thought it would be perhaps interesting for public to follow this research, and we were really curious about sharing this research. And like this, these talks were developed, and they were developed together with Frida Robles, and also reacting on researchers Dagmar Tröstler did. And I will try now to tell you about the procedure of today, and then to present the two speakers, and then we will start. I think I have a little, no. So the procedure of the day would be, after my introduction, I would hand over to one speaker, and this speaker will talk about 15 minutes. He will then give over to the second speaker. Then there will be a discussion between the two speakers. Then I will join them, and at the very end, you are cordially invited with your questions and to nourish our research and discussions. So at the end of this first part, we are happy when you join our discussion and to give new perspectives in our thoughts. But before this, I have a little, perhaps a little piece of text I was writing. I tried to read it. Roots, listen to the roots. Trace their interweaving with your fingers, the branching. Drive along and try to think along these paths. Take the strand of a thought and change it along this root that has been torn out. Imagine you live in these roots. Imagine their causes are your city. Imagine their thickenings are your space. Who do you want to live with? With whom do you want to share the paths? With whom do you want to share the spaces? With whom? How do you share the food? You siphoning off the inside of the root causes. I'm very, very happy that this talk of these two extraordinary people is possible today. And both of them I had the chance to meet. Yohan Rangan, I met last year in Sulawesi. Douglas Godbold, I could meet this year because Dagmar brought us together according her researches. Douglas Godbold is a professor of forest ecology at the University for Bodenkultur in Vienna. He has worked for many years on ecological processes with soils. This work was originally on how roots and their symbiotic fungi take up nutrients. Over the years, has expanded his interest to cover many processes in soils, such as how humus accumulates and why, but also his interest to have expanded to how biodiversity, particularly tree biodiversity and fungal diversity, affect and regulate the functions of ecosystems. This has led him to work in different ecosystems in many countries, from subtropical systems in Ethiopia to temperate forests in Europe to boreal forests in Russia and Mongolia. And I had the pleasure to discuss with Douglas about his understanding of the forest and how he, as a scientist, offered me a view how for him the system works and what kind of ecological circular systems touch each other in this complex system of the forest. Yohan Rangan, who is the first speaker today, I had the pleasure to meet him last year in Sulawesi. Sulawesi is a region of Toraja. I think it's in the south of Sulawesi, and Sulawesi is one of the biggest islands in Indonesia. We had a wonderful encounter, and Yohan brought us to extraordinary places. And when I thought how we can offer these talks to the public, I thought I have to ask him. And I'm so happy that he joins because it's over midnight already in Toraja, and I'm so happy he's there. Yohan loves to tell stories about the landscapes and ancestors he lives with. He holds a diploma of the Tourism Academy in Makassar, which is in the, I think it's in the south of Sulawesi. And he is since 25 years a guide in Toraja as well. I will not forget this, the vice president of the State Guide Association in Toraja. And now I would hand over to Yohan, who would be the first speaker.
So Claudia already introduced me. That my CV, short CV. So she's right that now here is a midnight because we have 6 hours different with Austria, Vienna. Yeah? Well, actually, Indonesia is located where I'm from. is located in Southeast Asia, and we live in one of the island, belongs to Indonesian archipelago called Sulawesi. At least here I can show you a little bit where we are exactly, and this is Indonesia, yeah, Indonesia archipelago, and I live just right there, yeah. So one of the very famous destination that visited a lot by tourists is a place called Toraja land, or in our language we call Toraja. Yeah, this area, it's about 3,200 kilometers square. It was so famous by its culture. It's a wonderful culture. So before the area Christianized by the Dutch missionaries in the beginning of 20th century, actually the people had their own belief, which is called in Torajan language Aluk Todolo, means the old belief or the old belief of the ancestors, which is the Dutch call it animist. So what's exactly animist is that people believe in the ancestral worship, and one of the customs, the tradition that still practiced until today, is the death feast. Yeah. So the death feast, comparing with other feasts like Thanksgiving ceremony, wedding, is most important for us in Toraja, because the death ceremony, yeah, is the last time that you can do your best for your mom, for your dad, or for your beloved family. And until now, we keep doing it. Even we keep practicing it. Even most of the people already believe in Christian. So in the ancient belief, we believe that when somebody dies, so the spirit will pass from the real world to unreal world. And of course, there was a procession according to our tradition. So all the spirit of the dead body should be purified. And the way how to purify them was killing animals. Maybe, killing some buffaloes. Yeah, buffaloes considered as the highest offering in our tradition. So that's why in each funeral ceremony, if one or two happen, the animals that we will see very often are buffaloes and pigs. Yeah, pigs is the second highest offering as an animals. Maybe you will not believe me if I'm telling you that there's a buffalo here that it can cost until around 40,000 euro. How much in our local money is around 600 million rupiahs. Yeah, I will show you one of the this one. So this is one of the spotted buffalo with yellow horns and blue eyes. Yeah. Why this kind of the buffalo? It costs so much because they are rare. We cannot find it, and we cannot breed it easily. Yeah. So they have like a recessive gene. So that's why not whole family can have it. And considered as the highest offering in the funeral because they are rare and they have blue eyes, that because we consider as the lights to light the way of the spirit go to the second well. Yeah. In our belief in Toraja, when somebody die, they are not buried immediately. Yeah. But kept inside the house such for a long time, even months or even years. So that's also like unbelievable for you. But Claudia has been here last 2 years, and she saw that it's true that we still keep the dead body inside the house during months or during years. and waiting for the funeral of him or her. And we have in Toraja that the belief said that our belief that when somebody died, yeah, we never bury it under the ground. Yeah, that's very related with our old belief that the land consider as the mother and sky consider as the father. So in Torajan ancient belief, they wouldn't make the land dirty just because put the dead body under the ground, like the Muslim way. Indonesia is one of the Muslim country, and we have a lot of burial graveyard of the Muslims. They buried under the ground. Instead of in Toraja, we never buried the dead body under the ground. Yeah, because all Torajan belief also uh, in related with the nature. They didn't want to make the nature dirty or spoil the nature of the dead body. So that's why one of the way how to uh, keep the dead body is up high, up in the rocks, or I mean cliff, in the cliff side. Yeah. So this is one of the cliff side, yeah, like a burial site. Yeah, it's the high rocks dig inside, and those some person in the burial day, they put the dead body up, and after that they'll put inside the holes. So this is some holes. Yeah, this is the dig hole inside, about 2 meters deep inside, where they put the dead body inside. So this is in contact that the dead body never contact with the land. Yeah. So until now, nowadays in Toraja, we still using this way of how to keep the dead body after the funeral ended. And some others, the way how to bury some dead body, especially for the new baby born died. So we didn't mix, we didn't put together with the adult, but we put inside the living trees. Why living trees? Yeah, because according to this our belief in Toraja, that a new baby born died without having any teeth yet, any teeth. So it's considered that it has a pure soul. So that's why in the ancient time, we have the way how to put this new baby born, put inside the living trees. This is one of the living trees, and we should make a hole in each different corner of the trees to put the corpse of the baby inside. This is the hole. So this kind of the tree, in our local language, we call tarra, written spelling T-A-R-R-A, tarra. Tarra is a special tree where we put the corpse of the baby, because this tree, it has a white saps or latex. So when we make the hole to put the baby inside, so the sap of the tree, it will appear and consider as the mother breast to feed the soul of the new baby born when we put inside the living trees. And we consider that this living tree would make the baby become adult. After the spirit arrived on the tops of the tree, it would fly away to the second world peacefully. Yeah. And so that's why for the adult and some adult like me die, so they will make me a funeral, because one way how to purify our soul is killing animals. As I told you before, that our highest offering as an animals, they are buffaloes. So that's why in Toraja, in our homeland, yeah, those buffaloes are so expensive for the reason of the funeral. Well, Toraja at the beginning of 20th century, around 1906, the Dutch missionary came to Toraja, yeah, and then they conquer the land, they conquer people, and then they change the belief. Instead of belief in the ancient belief, so people believe in Christian, yeah. Right now, according to the last census, since 20 years ago, the Torajan mostly we are Christian, Catholic, and Protestant. Even though we keep practicing, we keep doing our old tradition, which is called Rambu Solo. Rambu Solo means funeral ceremony, yeah, keeping the dead body inside the house until months or even years, until all the family can gather together and have all those everything's prepared. So on the point of economy, yeah, funeral ceremony is totally ruins. Means spend a lot of money to prepare, organize a funeral of the dead body. Nowadays, we are around 900,000 inhabitants in Toraja, and near, let's say 1 million with totally with Torajan who live outside, because Torajan are so famous, going outside, looking for work, looking for a job outside, because in Toraja we are agriculture, yeah. So people live 90% we live from the agriculture, and there's a concept of Torajan that if you are just an agriculture farmers, you will then ever do a best funeral for your mom or for your father. Where you can get money buying such a very expensive buffaloes from doing a farmer. So that's why nowadays around 200,000 Torajan live outside. I mean, in other island or even in abroad. So in Toraja, our living is planting rice. Yeah, now we have 2 crops a year, sometimes 3 when there is a rainy season. And even though we can also plant like cassava, sweet potatoes, yeah. So all the concept, yeah, of Torajan people are living from the agriculture. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna show you as well one very important thing that we have, yeah. That here in Toraja we have a very special ritual, especially of the dead body. This ritual done, let's say, once in a 20 years. Originally, once in a 20 years. But let's say 6 years ago, our government recommend to people who live up in the mountain to do it once in a year for the reason of the tourism. And what kind of ritual is that? That's we call in our language, ma ne means cleaning the grave and put the new clothes for the dead body. You can see over here. You can see that there's some dead body and still well conserved because they were mummified. Yeah. So those are dead body with their hairs, and the family give them clothes. Yeah. If we translate in English, ma ne means looking after our grandmother. Yeah, looking after our grandmother. What does it mean? So that's why the maknanya appear in our culture, because the family loves a lot to the family, and each time we would like to make them happy. So that's why there's an activity that opening the grave, take the body outside, cleaning them, and re-put the dress, the new dress for them. Yeah, that's really, maybe for you it's a little bit curious, but it happened here that some dead bodies still well conserved. Why? Because when they died years ago, they put some herbs. Yeah, it's like the way how they mummified in Egypt. Yeah, so in Toraja it happened as well. Yeah, just that's why some dead bodies still well preserved when we open the grave. Yeah, well, some others is broken because people years recently they use formalin, make injection to the body, so after just couple of years it's broken. But those well preserved, mummified, they use some local herbs. Yeah, well, maybe do I have time yet? Yeah, so these are some like main points, some in highlights of our tradition, our culture, and we live in about 900 meters of the altitude. Yeah, so Toraja is a highland, and then that's our culture, our tradition that I can show you, and I can tell you this story in short. Yeah, so we give later to moderator, yeah, to organize this meeting. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Yohan, for this insight for the Torajan culture and also the influences of economy on the traditions of your animist belief. I think there will be, we come back later in our talk. And thank you very much. And I will hand over now to Douglas, and I'm very curious how he will give us an insight to his research and his understanding of ecology, and particularly in the forest.
Okay, so that's a tough act to follow with something that sounds like science. So I'll do my very best. So my job is to give my view of cycles in forests, and I'll try and do this in a series of 3 slides. It's in my nature to always give a lecture. I try not to give a lecture. I just need them to illustrate a few things. So I think if we look at any forest, or if we look almost at any ecosystem, we see a series of cycles. If I look at this picture that you can see, I hope I see 3 cycles which I will describe, and all of these cycles have different lengths of time. So some of them might be seconds or minutes. Some of them might be tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. And often we never visualize these as cycles, simply because our own perception of time. So we live for 70, 80, if it good, 90 years, of which a shorter period of that has an active consciousness or an active memory. It starts off, you can't really remember your childhood, and it probably ends that you can't remember anything at the end. So that's this sort of this short period, and if we have long cycles, then we perceive them as stationary. They're not stationary, but it's our perception that nothing much changes. Or if it does change, often we can't remember what the previous state was. So for example, if you see a change in a forest, you have the greatest difficulty to remember what it was actually like beforehand. You just look and you think, yeah, that's the way it is. And very quickly that memory that you have of this initial state gets moved out of your brain. So you see this linearity again. You don't see the cycles so much, but the cycles are always there. We just often, as I said, don't see them. So I want to describe this forest that we can see here in 3 different cycles. Okay, these are carbon, so carbon dioxide and matter cycles. These is a water cycle, which is a bit more difficult to see out of the slide. And the other one is soils and the lithosphere, which are rocks. Okay, so how does the forest work? How does my forest work? Well, you've got a leaf at the top of the screen on your top left-hand side. This leaf is the primary driver of everything we see in the picture. So that this leaf, through a process of photosynthesis, is taking up carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which you can see is the blue bits in the middle. And it's turning this carbon dioxide gas into sugars. And what it actually is doing is it's absorbing light energy from the sun. And this light energy is used to transform the gas, carbon dioxide, into the sugar. So we're getting a transformation of energy states. We're getting a transformation from light energy into mass energy. And this mass energy that's stored drives everything else. So what happens is we have a transformation of this energy within seconds, a really short process. And instantly we get this conversion from CO2 to sugars, instantly in terms of our perception. Another big process that's going on in this forest that's a bit more difficult to visualize than photosynthesis is respiration, breathing. So we're all breathing. I hope we all still are. And we're giving carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So we're effectively breaking down mass and giving it back as carbon dioxide. Well, every component within this forest is doing exactly the same. And even these leaves are doing exactly the same. And then we have one of our first really short cycles that only about 30% of the material of the photosynthetic productivity ends up as mass in this forest. The other 30% is rapidly cycled back over photosynthesis. So we've got CO2 cycling, carbon dioxide, if you like, cycling through the system in a relatively short cycle. So this might be a day for some parts. So what happens with these sugars that are produced in the leaves? Well, they're transported down the trees. Some of them are used to form these stems that you can see, this loading up the system with biomass. And some of them go down into the root system, and they drive, or they supply, these roots, which you can see at the bottom here, and these roots with their fungal symbionts. So all trees, even in Indonesia, have some form of fungal symbiont. So trees do not live alone; they live with a fungus that lives with them on the roots, and this fungus relies upon the carbon, the sugars that are made in the leaves and are transported down the stem and into this, into the fungus down the bottom here. You can see the fungus with the yellow colors of them. And these fungi then move all of the energy, all of this sugar out into the soil, out into the forest floor. And they're then, if you like, fueling every other process that's going on inside the soil, okay? But what we have then is we have also, over time, a buildup of biomass. So you can imagine this forest gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes a bigger and bigger store of energy. So the energy is stored as this biomass. It has a nutritional value, if you like. And so slowly but surely we accumulate energy within our forest, within this cycle. The next cycle I will come to, which is a bit more difficult to show graphically, is we have a water cycle. So water that's in the soil is being drawn out of the soil. It's transported up these stems, which are actually dead. Most of the cells within a stem are dead because they have to transport water. They're just dead tubes. And they're transported up into the leaves, and these leaves give off water vapor into the atmosphere to start the cycle again, of the cycle that it will rain again, bring water back to the system and bring water back to the soil. You can see the importance of how this water cycle moves through the soil, through the trees, and evaporates out in the leaves. If we look at the Amazon and a water cloud moving across the Amazon from the north to the south, it goes through 6 different trees. So we estimate that it rains 6 times, and that water molecule passes through 6 different tree stems and comes back to the atmosphere. It moves on another couple of 100 kilometers. It rains. It passes through soil, through the stem, back to the atmosphere. So we have this constant cycle, this constant cycling of water through this system. Not only is the water moving up the stems, and its major functions, it keeps the leaves cool, because sitting there in the sunlight, the leaves heat, so they have to be cooled. So you have this sweating water cooling system. But also the movement of water in the soil pulls nutrients through the soil and pulls them to the root surface. And the nutrients that arrive at the root surface are then taken up by the tree, and they're transported up into the leaves where most of them are needed, and they're used. Okay? So that's the third, brings us to the third cycle in my one slide, first of all, which is the rock standing there, which symbolizes the pedosphere, the soils, or or the lithosphere, which is the rock layer below the immediate soil. We now have cycles that are running on 10,000 years, hundreds of thousand years. If you think of a soil, you think it's static. Soils aren't static. Soils are changing all the time. So even in a natural forest, the soil is developing. It's actually moving from one soil state to the next soil state. But we can't see that because we don't live long enough. So for us, it's static. For us, nothing changes, okay? But it does. And sometimes this progression of changing from one soil to another, this transition that's going on is reset. So for example, you have a glaciation event, which resets all the soil development and the whole thing starts again. Or you have a volcano that erupts, replenishes the soil, and the soil process starts one more time through this cycle, okay? But also even within trees or within forests, if you look at a tree when it falls over, it pulls a lot of soil up with it. And that again starts a new process, a new recycling of the soil. It mixes up the soil and it starts a new cycle of development going on. So even we have smaller cycles within these very, very long 10,000 year cycles. And none of us can imagine what 10,000 years means, but I assume it's quite a long time. Okay, so we have this cycle, and in my forest we have this loading up of biomass. So this brings me to my next slide. What happens with this biomass? Well, this biomass is also recycled. So we had all the leaves of the trees falling off, and that's one you can imagine. And these leaves are then turning over, they're being degraded, and they're released back as CO2. That's the immediate, as carbon dioxide. That's the immediate cycle. But also the roots are doing the same, and they're cycling, dying and being reformed, and dying and being reformed. And most of this biomass cycling is being done by these, which are fungi. Various types of fungi. Some of the fungi, this one here, this is a one that you might see in Europe, well, a relative of it, which is a death cap, a highly poisonous one. This is actually in Bhutan, but it's the same sort of thing. And this is a mycorrhizal species. It's very, very poisonous, but it's actually very, very beneficial to the trees. And it's attached to this mycelium, this fine sort of cotton-like, thread-like system growing through the soil. And this is transporting all of the carbon, all of that sugars out into the soil and feeding the soil. And the other thing it does is we now know we have a communication system between trees, that trees communicate with each other through this underground system, through this, what's called the wood wide web, unfortunately. So we have this biomass communication system, but also all of the tree trunks are being recycled by fungi. So if you like, if you saw on my other slide, there was a decomposing tree trunk. Suddenly this dead tree trunk, which was just there for transporting water, comes back to life. It comes back to life because it's suddenly full of fungi, which are breaking it down. And it's suddenly full of insects, and it's suddenly full of bacteria that are degrading this. So this thing that you see rotting on the forest floor, if you go anywhere, is full of life. It wasn't beforehand. When it was alive, it was dead. But now it's dead, it's alive, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we have this recycling system, and this brings me to my last thing, my third slide, is that what I've tried to describe is systems within one tree or within one small forest, but actually ecosystems are recycling. So all ecosystems, this is a picture in Russia, and this system has been disturbed, the trees have been removed, and this driving backwards and going back, and it goes through this transition of this birch forest and eventually comes back to the spruce forest that it was. So we have disturbance driving a cycle of this ecosystem. The ecosystem is changed, it moves to another state and eventually comes back to the original state if it's undisturbed for this length of time. And this is critically important for all forests. Forests have to be disturbed, otherwise they degrade. They stop being so alive, if you like. So we have this constant forest disturbance, and this is normally natural, such as fire or wind. Yeah, are the big ones, fire or wind. Of course, we disturb forests, but we disturb them so much that we're actually killing them off because they don't never get this chance to return backwards. So I hope you can see then that we've got different cycles running. So we've got short-term cycles, which are sometimes so short we can't even think of what a millisecond is. We have longer-term things that we can view. We all see that the leaves fall off the trees, and so we get an idea that this is a cycle and a biomass cycle. And then we have things that are so long that we just can't think what this actually means, what 10,000 years really means. We can hardly think what 200 years means, let alone 10,000 years. Okay, but I think it's all a cycle eventually. So I hope that, yeah, I hope that helps, whatever. Yeah. I got to stop this.
So I just thank you very, very much. I think it's a really rich field of different approaches towards time and ecology and the notion of different relations to substance which permanently transforms, I would say. But I would love Yohan and Douglas. So in our procedure, there would be now the time that you have the chance to get in perhaps a short dialogue between yourself, and then I have some questions to you both, but perhaps first you can enter in a little conversation between you both.
You ready for this?
Could I speak a little bit?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's so nice that you're the story that you told us about the recycling in the woods. Yeah, actually, I'm not really forestry, but I love nature because our culture as well in Toraja, they love nature. Yeah, so my culture doesn't want to spoil the nature. That's why Torajan people, yeah, they really like planting, cultivating plants. Yeah, we love planting plants for survive or even surrounding our house, making some little garden. And we love the little garden with many variety of plants. So I've got some question for you. Hearing about what you explained, because Europe and Indonesia, where I live, we have four different. You have summer, you have winter, you have spring, and you have
Autumn.
autumn. Exactly. And in Indonesia, we have only two. We have dry season and rainy season, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I'm curious about the different how those trees growing in the four season country and two season countries, and also the difference of the recycling of those what you explained in the woods of four season countries and two seasons countries.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
If four season countries, right? That's a great term. That you see the leaves fall off at once. You see it happen, right? We go from summer to autumn. Autumn, you see this big change.
Yeah.
If you in two season countries, in Indonesia, the leaves are also falling off. You just don't see it. Again, it's because it doesn't happen all at once. So if you go into your forest, you'll see that there's leaves on the ground. Okay.
Exactly.
So there is a constant shedding. It's not as fast, right? So the leaves live longer. So if you look at the leaves in some of your trees, they'll be big, green, thick leaves. They're designed to last, right? They're designed to stay on the tree for a longer period of time. But eventually they fall off. So you've always got material falling onto the floor. And also the perception of what happens is in Europe, or somewhere with an autumn, the leaves lay on the floor, and you see them. You walk through them. It's a great feeling, I mean, to walk through these newly fallen leaves, and they stay there for a little while. But they stay there for a little while because it's winter, so nothing much happens. But in Indonesia, it's warm all year. It's warm and wet. I assume even at your 1,800 meters of altitude, it's still warm and it's still moist. So those leaves decompose really, really fast. So you have a cycle going on, but it's this decomposition cycle, this rotting cycle, is really, really quick. So the leaf hits the floor and it doesn't take very long and it's gone. So you don't notice that it's so much there. It was there. It just turns over faster. But that's a really great question.
I just try to follow your story, and
Yeah.
I got some question there because we live in a different place.
I think that's the beauty of this whole system. It comes up with things you never thought of yourself. When you're in your own system, you don't think of what other people view it. It's cool. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Douglas.
Okay, I have a question now. So, yeah. I have a sort of a simple question, and then a bit more of a philosophical one. But what happens to the trees with the infant trees if everybody keeps making holes in them? You have the infant trees with the latex, and you make a hole, and you put a baby inside it.
Exactly.
What happens to the tree?
Oh.
Does the tree close the hole?
Yeah. Okay. I would like to underline what I explained before, that this kind of culture, it was practiced when Torajan people still believe in ancient belief. Yeah, but as I explained before, that at the beginning of 20th century in Toraja, let's say 1913, it was the first time that the Bible arrived in our homeland, brought by the Dutch missionary. And your question about the trees that we make a lot of holes, the tree, it didn't die, but keep growing, because this tree is one of the, we consider as one of the sacred tree. Even we make a lot of holes in each different corner, the tree keep growing, and because this tree, inside part of this tree, it's totally hollow.
Yeah.
It's totally hollow.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. You can see this tree here? Yeah.
I can see it. You have to hold it a bit higher.
Yes. So mostly this tree is growing inside of the bamboo forest in each different village in Toraja. And why Torajan people choose it to make as a grave? Because this tree is rare, and even they make many different holes, but the tree keeps keep growing, and it's rare because inside part the tree is hollow. It's totally hollow. Yeah. So
you have a process of renewal going on.
yeah, so it's a quite strange as well. But nowadays in up here, we can still find those trees, yeah? and a heritage of how people make it, this graveyard. But we didn't practice anymore, yeah, because people are already Christian.
I mean, it's actually beautiful to hear. And the other thing I wanted to ask, which is a bit more tricky, right? How do I formulate this? You don't put bodies in the soil because they pollute the soil, okay? And I think you use the term dirty or something like that, which is really, really interesting, right? But you keep a body in the house, whereas in Western culture, people really do not like dead bodies, right? And that's such a fantastic juxtaposed view of life, right? That everybody honors a dead person, but they don't actually want to have anything to do with them once they're dead. But in the culture you described, people are kept and honored, and they're not put into the soil. Whereas we have the system where we might honor people that are dead, but actually you want to get rid of them as quickly as possible and put them into the soil. Yeah. So I find that absolutely fascinating, this difference in mentality, or this, what, it's not, I don't know if the mentality is the right word, but yeah. So what if people are keep them in the back of the house? What is the feeling towards this person in the back of the house?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, according to our old belief, yeah, keeping the dead body inside the house such a long time, maybe months or even years, well, I underlined that I saw a funeral in Toraja with a dead body kept inside the house already 30 years. You can imagine that.
Yeah.
No, not 1 year, 2 years, but 30 years.
Yeah.
I think for European life, European tradition, it's totally unbelievable. Yeah, because there, well, I've been once in Spain and I saw Europe, and keeping the dead body inside the house, as you said, and maybe 2 weeks, it's already, or one week is already much.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But here in Toraja, one reason why Torajan family keep their mom, their father, or their brother such a long time, just to have time, for them to gather together and to prepare a last farewell party. Means that they can do their best for him or for her for the last time. Yeah. Well, we know that in Toraja, when the dead body is still kept inside the house. I'm sorry. When the dead body is still kept inside the house, so our belief, our tradition, we consider that him or her still sick. So we call him sick or dead, sick person.
I think, wow.
So, like my grandfather, the dead father of my mom, he died last 2007 May, and the funeral was October 2008. So more than a year kept inside the house, and we consider that him still sick. We call him sick person. Yeah, in our language called tomate, means dead person, but he's still, for us, he's still sick. So that's why the families who live together with keep offering food and drinks beside his coffin. Even physically, he's already dead.
Yeah.
But we consider that him still sick. And when the funeral ceremony started, yeah, after 1.5 years, so our belief consider that him already dead totally, and the soul of him start doing the journey from the real world to the second world, where would be the eternal life. And how the family make the last or the best for him, that doing the funeral ceremony. So each son, daughter, or the close relative, they are obligated to offer him the best offering that they can. Maybe one son give him 1 buffalo, or the second son 2 buffaloes. So that's why I explained before that the highest offering in our funeral ceremony as an animal are buffaloes. And why buffaloes chosen as a highest offering? Because buffalo has a big, big body, and has a lot of meat. Yeah, has a lot of meat. It's really related with the how afterward, when the buffaloes are sacrificed in the funeral, there will be a distribution of the meat. Yeah. So there is some person who in charge to kill the buffalo. There is some person who in charge to skin the buffalo, to take the skin, and some person who in charge to cut the meat into pieces. So maybe in the 3rd or 4th day of the funeral, that will be the sacrificing buffaloes, all the villagers who live in the village where the funeral is being held, each person of the house will give a piece of meat. Yeah, a piece of meat. And the way how the people distribute the meat is depending on the social status of of everyone. So consider that the best part of the buffalo will be given to the higher class, and like the stomach part of the buffalo will be given to ordinary. So there's already the way, the procedure how to distribute the buffalo meat according to the social status.
But it's distributed raw. It's not.
Sorry.
It is. It's not cooked.
Oh, not cooked. Raw. Not cooked. It's distributed raw to villagers. And
Wow.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah.
Wow.
And the way and who in charge to do all these things, that who live in the village, that his father or his grandfather did it before. So this job, it's descended to the son, grandson, or grandson. Yeah. So that's what happened in Toraja, talking about the tradition and the dead body, and about talking about the dead body. It's very important topic of us. Yeah, because imagine that funeral ceremony can run or can take time like a week, 6 to 7 days, with each different day with different activities. So the last day of the funeral will be the burial day, when the family carry the dead body from the house to the graves. Yeah, and in Toraja, we say that the grave is a house without smoke. Why house without smoke?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Because there will be the next life without activity. Yeah.
Must be a big event when somebody dies, because not only do you have the emotional loss, but you're financially ruined. So it must be.
Douglas, by the way, this is one of the funeral ceremony, big one. Yeah, this is the procession of the people who are coming to the funeral.
Oh wow!
Yeah? And those are some rice barns where you put the rice inside. Yeah, so those in front there are two girls dressed in a traditional dress of Toraja.
You have to lift it up just a little bit more. Okay. Yeah. Better. Okay.
And you see under over the ground some pigs, live pigs, also offering.
In the background.
Yeah.
In the foreground. Oh, I can see.
There.
Yeah. With a string around it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Can I have a question to you? Because I'm extremely curious, because I think Douglas so clearly pointed out that our human life dimension is not capable to understand the circular systems which are we part of, and especially in woods, so that our life span is just a particular small something, but all this processing or permanent transformations have a completely different dimension of time. And as I understood it, please correct me, that every matter transforms permanently. And what I find quite interesting, that for me, I had the idea that, as I understood the animistic belief, so everything is connected with the kind of human soul, and there's no creation, but a permanent transformation, an ongoing transformation. And I would be curious, how many, so when you have a communication with your ancestors, and you're sacrificing animals for the good being of the dead, to be with you in the present. So with how many ancestors you are around in the present.
Yeah.
So how many ancestors, how many ancestors you live with in the very moment. Yes.
What do you mean exactly that how many ancestors we live with?
Yeah, because if I understood it, so you contribute, you make an immense effort, and you need a lot of economy to create a communication with the other elements, and to make a good transport, a good ticket for your ancestors to get there. And at the same time, the meat is also the meat for the village. So I remember when I went into the restaurant, they said, no, we have no meat because there was no funeral. So there's a certain, there's only, you can eat meat when there was a funeral, because if not, it's rarely meat. But I found it also interesting. But okay, this is this kind of relation. But when you communicate with the ancestors, and I understood that the Torajan people are always in a relation with the ancestors. And I just asked myself, how many generations you live with? So it's just your mother and your grandfather, or is it, so with how many people you live in the presence which are already dead? So how many ancestors are around you?
That's talking about this culture, yeah. So this culture that belongs to these people who live in this highland. So according to the history, that they've been doing it, this kind of culture, let's say about 500 years ago. Yeah, I mean, by sacrificing animals, yeah, because Toraja, before anybody arrived here or found them, so there was something like an association of people here, like their own government, yeah. So that's why if something happened in the village, yeah, each person, they have their own job. I mean, some person in charge to handle this funeral, to be master of ceremony, yeah, because in the funeral ceremony there's something like master of ceremony who speak in the high Torajan language, high level Torajan language. Like me, I do speak Torajan as a local language, beside Indonesian language as our national language. But there is also in here we call the language of Tomina. Tomina means person who knows a lot about the tradition. And each time when there is a funeral or wedding day, there used to be like a master of ceremony who are speaking in the we call the cult language. Yeah. So that's why nowadays we find out that some master of ceremony actually, before their fathers and their grandfathers were master of ceremony as well. Yeah. And this kind of the offering to our ancestors when there was the sacrificing, yeah. So for Torajan belief, so actually the meat that the people take in the funeral ceremony, the meat of the buffalo slaughtered, that's to accompany, consider to accompany the soul of the dead body to reach the second world, where would be the eternal life, and we call in Toraja language Puya, P-U-Y-A, Puya. Yeah, Puya will be where will be all this soul would go to the Puya, but they arrive not in the same time. It depending on what the family did to this dead body. So as more as buffaloes slaughtered by the family or offered by the family, the quickest the soul of the dead body arrived in Puya.
So there's a strong economy. So more buffaloes, quicker in the second world.
Yeah, that's considered in the in ancient Torajan belief.
But I have my question, because perhaps I was too confused before because I was so overwhelmed. But because I learned, or I understood, that you live with your ancestors. So in the present, you also do the burial ceremony because you want the good protection or the good co-presence in the present from your ancestors. And I just want to know how many ancestors you live with. So with how many generations you live now, Yohan?
You mean me, myself, or all Toraja?
Yes. No, but with how many dead ancestors you live in the present? How many generations you think back you were together with your ancestors?
Let's say, well, for me, myself, if I should answer you, like 4 to 5 generation for me, myself.
So your house is quite crowded.
Yeah, actually, talking about house, well, now I'm living in my private house, but we have we call family house, which is called Tom Conan. Yeah, Tom Conan, like this. Yeah, with the boat-shaped roof. Yeah, so that's a boat-shaped roof, and we call in our language we call Tongkonan. Tongkonan means a house, a building which unites all the roots of the family, even from many generations ago. So each Toraja, when one Toraja like me, if someday I should live outside, maybe in abroad, but until I still alive, I still belong to Tongkonan of my family. So that's why I believe I belong to 2 different Tongkonan. Tongkonan, the side of my mom and side of my dad. Why? Because my mom and my dad comes from 2 different Tongkonan. So Tongkonan in Toraja, it can unite all the roots of the family from many generations ago. So that's why if there is like restoration of Tongkonan or building of new Tongkonan, all generation, all families of this Tongkonan should participate.
Okay.
Should participate. Give some donation. Some give more, some give less, some give half according to their economy. So actually, Toraja, we have our Tongkonan, and now many different families like me with my wife, with my sons, I live in a normal house. Yeah, normal house. I mean, new model nowadays model, but I belong to Tongkonan, which built in the village, and my wife also belong to other Tongkonan.
But the ancestors, in a way, inhabit this Tongkonan. So you are with them there, and this is also your presence.
Yeah. So we believe that our soul of ancestors always stay in Tongkonan.
Okay.
So
So they are not in your house. You can visit them over there.
No, okay. We should in Tongkonan, in our family house.
Okay.
And
sorry.
And one thing that we should underline that Tongkonan, always build facing north and south. Why? Because according to ancient Torajan belief that the lives come from the north and the dead abides to the south. So that's why Tongkonan, it's interesting. This is Tongkonan. This is rice barns, but same model. Yeah, always building facing north and south. You can see those men with the sickle. That's one of the funeral ceremony dance. Yeah. So that's dance we call mak badong. If there is a funeral ceremony of the high class, it's always shown. Yeah. And it's dance telling about the biography of the dead body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So perhaps I have a last question to you both before I would like to open the discussion.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask, because the work we are busy with has oracle and sacrifice. I think the motive of sacrifice here, it's quite clear. And I'm just curious, what is, Douglas, how you can see, how you can read future in the ecology of the forest? So how much what you can read in the presence of a forest constitution, how much you can read the future, how you do future reading out of it. And for Yohan, what is your concept of future with the ancestors? So what is your concept of time? So how you relate the past to the future and the present? But perhaps first, Douglas.
How do you read the future from a forest?
Yes.
Whoa.
Are there oracles in the forest?
Maybe. I guess you read the future of the forest from its structure. That if you were standing at the edge of a forest and you were asked to view what would happen, how it would develop, then you look at it from its regeneration, yeah, from what is there to regenerate, to regrow the forest. It's actually what practical foresters do every day. They go out and they try to predict how this forest will develop. The ones that are not working with a big machine to cut everything down, but to try and grow a forest, they do exactly this. They try and read what the development is and how can you direct the development? Yeah, by doing this, by removing this tree to move it into this shape. So yeah, I suppose you can read it. So,
but in a way, the forest, if I understood right, your circular development, so the forest has also the permanent presence of its ancestors, because in this permanent transformation, no?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course. You have your ancestors laying on the floor, and that's probably one of the analogies. One of the similar things is they stay for quite a long time. So your kin, when they fall over and start to decompose, they're actually there for a very, very long part of the time, and so you probably, as a tree, you probably live with an awful lot of your ancestors for quite a long time. Absolutely. So.
You can answer me the future question, Yohan.
Well, so the concept for me about the ancestors, that for me as a Toraja, we always have the soul, the ancestor that always stay in our family house, yeah, because we respect them a lot. And one way how to prove that we respect our ancestors, that the Torajan keep renovating, keep maintaining the family house. Because let's say each 10 or 12 years, the roof of the traditional house, which is made of bamboo, yeah, it's broken because of sun, humidity, rain. So that's why the family should gather and to renovate, yeah, because we consider that our ancestors always stay inside the house. And one thing as well, one proof very important that we respect a lot to our ancestors, especially to our grandma or to our mom, our grandpa. Each time when we do the funeral, yeah, the family, the close relative, yeah, you can imagine that they spend their money, buy those buffaloes, right, until something rupiahs or $1,000, yeah. But for Torajan, it doesn't bother us. Why? Why? We know that the life is difficult, especially now. Already nearly 1 year, 1.5 year nearly. Like me, I didn't work because of Corona, no tourism. But we are optimistic that as long as we do our best for our dead person to make the best funeral, the soul of our mom, of our dead, will help us in the future time. That's the belief of Torajan, that the people who already died, huh, as long as you treat them well, like our mom, our grandpa, the soul of them would help us in the future time, especially like me. I keep following the life, and I believe that my soul of my grandparents would come to help me as well. Yeah, so Torajan are so optimistic. Yeah, that's one of the concept that we have, that we should treat the dead body well. So in Indonesia, many Indonesians say that, especially for Torajan, there's a very important word. They say Toraja is a nice place to die. Why? Because the dead body are well treated.
So the well treatment of the dead body is also we can say it's an investment in the future.
Yeah.
No, it's not true. It's stupid what I said. But now I would like to open to other questions, and we could go for the gallery view. And meanwhile, till we all in the gallery view, here's one question from Manwai. And he wanted to ask to Yohan, he would like to understand why Torajan people consider the body dirty and not suitable to be buried in the ground.
Well,
but let's go for the gallery, Simona.
Oh.
Did you hear, Yohan?
Yes. So, shall I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And then there was, I think the next would be, I saw a question. Where is she?
Well,
Judith had a question. Judith would be the next, please.
Okay, thank you. From Munwai, yeah? Yeah, Munwai. Well, in our belief, yeah, talking about the dead body, yeah, related to the nature in the ancient time, Torajan people had the concept that the land, yeah, where people could cultivate plants, yeah, where people could plant something and it grows and they can survive from that, yeah. So actually, since the ancient time, Torajan understood a lot about the nature, yeah, because as I told you that 100% Torajan live from the agriculture, yeah. So they cultivated, they planted any plants, because any plants that we plant in Toraja, it will grow. It's explaining that the land is so fertile. And the question is, why Torajan consider the body dirty? Actually, Torajan people not really consider that the body is dirty, but because Torajan live from agriculture, so related to our tradition that the dead body should be buried or should be put in the rocks inside the cave, yeah, and never buried under the ground. It means that since long time ago, Torajan people and related to their belief that they didn't want to make the lands dirty, yeah, means they didn't want to spoil the land. So that's why all those dead body that mostly centuries ago, they put inside the cave. If you ever been here once in Toraja, I will bring you around to see many caves where people put dead body inside the cave instead of burying under the ground. Sorry?
No, I just wanted to ask Douglas, is it for you understandable why the body can spoil the soil? And then there's a question for you. But please.
My immediate thought was maybe they don't have a lot of agricultural land. If you live in an area where it's steep slopes, you don't have a lot of land. So the last thing you want to do is waste space burying somebody in it. I would have thought. I'm sure there's a real reason behind this that this has come about, and that would be my immediate thought that that's what you do.
Here's a question from Ruth Anderwald to Douglas. You talked about disruption in the form of disasters that forests profit from, for example, fires. Are there other influences on a larger time scale that can be constructed as such constructive, destructive occurrences?
On a larger time scale, they don't come much larger than the incidence of fire, actually, fire and insects and wind and so on. So this is something that should happen every 100 years or something. So, I mean, on larger time scales, is something like glaciation, where everything starts again when it goes through a whole series of processes. But they're actually so long, such processes, that they're not really that cyclic, because they don't really come back to an estate that was existing beforehand. Because some of those pre-glacial forests or something like that were, even in the tropics, they weren't the same forests as we have now. It's changed over time because the conditions have changed over time. Does that answer the question?
Perhaps Ruth Anderwald would like to respond by herself, but during this, so perhaps Ruth can become visible and ask directly if it was answered as she thought. And now Judith Pieper would have a question.
Yeah, first, thank you very much for your talks and discussions. It was really fascinating and interesting to me. And I wanted to comment on something that Yohan Rangan said, because for me, as well as for Douglas Godbold, it was really interesting, this idea of burying children into trees. And it reminded me of travel I made to Senegal in 2018. And there they have those baobabs, so like those trees. And they also bury certain people in it, but not children, but jugglers and buskers. I had to look it up. It's like Gaukler and Straßenmusikanten, and they call them griots. And it made me just think about, like in German, you say that, and you also, Yohan Rangan, said that children are thought to be innocent. And in a way, those jugglers and buskers sometimes also are perceived as innocent, that they always tell the truth. So that was fascinating to me, that this tradition of burying people in trees exists in different countries and on different like continents. And I still also have a question to you, Yohan Rangan, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. I wondered if the dead bodies are kept in your private homes or are they kept in the family homes?
Oh, so as I told you before that, explained before that, the dead body can be months or can be years, right? So like me, myself, I'm giving you an example. Suppose if I die today, so maybe in a few days, my body will be kept here in my private house. But finally, my family will discuss and bring me my body to the family house, which is located in the village. Why? Because the family house for us, which is called Tom Conan, with the boat safe roof, it's a place where all activities started, all happening started, and the building which unites the family. So any activities in our family should be started from Tom Conan. So that's why, well, maybe a couple of days my body in my private house. So giving time to my college, to my friends coming for condolence. But my body, they will keep my body maybe a couple of months in Tom Conan, in the family house. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
If I should explain you what's the meaning of Tom Conan, actually Tom Conan derived from two different words. Tongkon is a verb, means come and sit down. With suffix an is a one word. Tongkonan means a place which unites the family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Tongkonan for us is really important, because we are able to know the family roots by knowing a Tongkonan. Like,
thank you.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Perhaps Ruth Anderwald, you would like to precise your question to Douglas, and then perhaps we can continue with Chris Standfest.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think you've answered my question. I've seen that there are also similar questions in the blog. I was just wondering about the time frame of different cycles, as you spoke about cycles so much, and as you also mentioned things that we would construe as disasters, as very fertile for the forest. Thank you.
Douglas, you want to add something, or I just?
No, that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
So perhaps
I can actually do it by answering the next question.
Okay, you see it in the blog. So the next would be Chris Standfest. You want to precise something, or it was just a comment with the irreversible disturbance? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello, maybe I can, because I was wondering how you were talking about the cycles.
Yeah.
It all sounds a bit like that it would be a constant transformation, which is maybe not. Where would be the change? Or because it sounded, let's say, very healthy. And for this, I was just, I mean, it's also because of Anna Singh's book and so on, you know, the mushroom at the end of the world. People talk about, then would there be something like irreversible events that change?
Yeah,
they bring about change, where you cannot talk anymore about transformation.
In terms of ecosystems, there are. In terms of forest ecosystems, there are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can have absolutely devastating disturbance, right? So a classic example is Mount St. Helens the volcano explodes in the middle of the forest, and actually that forest will return in time, is already returning in time back to its original state. It's take a long time, but it's still coming back, right? Some of the most deadly things where you don't have reversibility is we have many ecosystems and many forests where they've been formed at a time when the climate is slightly different, and they have a system of self-supporting. So, for example, the climate's not always been, it changes over time. I mean, we change the climate now more rapidly than it's ever been changed, but all the same, this climate still does drift along. And so you have forests that have been formed in a previously slightly warmer, moister phase. And if you disturb them, they never return, because it's impossible, because they can't come back to that original state, because the surrounding conditions don't allow this to happen. And so the great example of one of the great examples is in the Canary Islands. If you've ever been to the Canary Islands, there's this natural laurel forest that's actually about 30 million years old. It used to cover much of Europe. And now if you remove it, it doesn't come back to this laurel forest, because it developed in a different climate. And also many of these things have, particularly forests, they have this self-sustaining functions. They create, if you like, their own equilibrium. So that some of them, for example, are constantly removing water, cloud water. So they bring in cloud water and they keep the forest moist. If you remove the tree cover, there's no cloud water being pulled in anymore. So it never comes back to this system as far as we can see. The conditions are just not there for it to be able to recycle. But something like the boreal forest, that picture I had, it's so big and it's so stable that, okay, a few bark beetles or a bit of fire that removes a part of it, it regrows again. And many of the systems are designed to burn. That's the problem of people building their houses in Spain in a eucalyptus forest, right? Eucalyptus is designed to catch fire. That's what it does. That's its ecology. So if you build your house in a eucalyptus forest and the forest catches fire and your house burns down, well, this was predictable, right? If you knew something about ecology. So, you know, so certain things are designed for certainly to be disturbed, but there are disturbances where you never get this back again, of course. So
it's also the concrete case, because what you're working in is in the Auenwälder, so the forests nearby the river. So also clearly when the water is controlled and no more überschwemmen, überschwemmen the Auen. So it's clearly that the condition of certain species will never come back, because the groundwater will go down. So with this strong correction, something will completely be deleted.
That's because you've changed the conditions. It's the same. That's a good example, actually, of a man-made one. That the conditions are no longer there. So, of course, if you were to cut down all those trees, you would not get an owl forest back. What you now see is the remnant trying to hang on to this chain under the changed conditions. Yeah. So.
Markus G., perhaps you want to formulate your question out loud, if you're still here. Markus? Hello?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
Hello. I just wanted to ask you first, thanks for your talk. And maybe you could elaborate a bit on the difference between matter and energy. This is often not quite understood how these circles are different. One can be recycled in a way, the other one can't. And maybe also in regards to the last question, maybe we should talk briefly about the resilience term, as it is also used in a lot of different contexts, coming from ecology, as far as I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So maybe that would be interesting. Also the link to biodiversity then. And second part of the question was how historic conditions can influence the development of forests. For example, that the forests we find in Europe today are limited in species by the Ice Age or things like that. So that these processes are not only determined by the environmental conditions or soil conditions, also have a historic component that can lead to certain developments.
Absolutely, a legacy.
Yeah.
Where do I start?
Sorry.
Definitely the tricky bit is energy and matter, because that's almost physics, right? So I tried to use the term actually in terms of matter is of biomass, because because biomass is an energy store, right? Because it has this captured light energy stored in it effectively, which so that an organism that's breaking it down can respire that energy back again. That's my analogy. So for example, whether, I don't know, there's too much physics to say what the difference is, but certainly for me, a forest is an energy store. That biomass has a potential storage of energy that's been built up over time, right? Whether that's correct physics or not is another question. All right. So so what was it? So what was the next bit? Sorry.
Maybe the term of resilience, and then the historic
of course.
conditions.
I mean, that's you talk. It sort of goes into ecosystem theories. Of you talk about resistance and resilience, and resistance is normally the ability to absorb and prevent changes, right? And so, and resilience is the ability to come back to the original state, is normally the way it's described. So you can have resilient ecosystems that come back to that original state. But actually, when you start to talk about ecosystems and this idea of permanent changes, we talk about ecosystems existing in different stable states. So you can have a forest that has a degree of stability, ecological stability. So if you disturb it, it comes back to that original state. If, however, you disturb it so much that you push it so far that it moves away from its resilience threshold, it moves into another stable state. So it could move from a forest to a grassland, and it reaches another ecologically stable state. So in ecological theory, we talk about these different stable states, and it's impossible to then move back up to a higher energy stable state. That is correct, and certainly sort of the way we see it. The trouble is, again, there's a concept of time. There's a time factor in it. Is that we see different stable states, and because we've got no idea what's going to happen in the next 100,000 years, you can never really be sure that these two different states aren't actually just two phases within a cycle, that eventually it will come back. And the answer to that question, the forests that we now see are in Europe are of course legacies of glaciation. The tree species we see are the rebound species that are coming back after glaciation. So they're a legacy of what survived when everything had to move south. And that's the same in any ecosystem. Any ecosystem that is on a system of recovery, it recovers from its components most of the time. It's seldom that something comes in from the outside. There are components within it that allow it to recover. So my example of that my boreal forest, as it recovers through a birch forest, which brings to the last point which you asked, which is biodiversity. And of course, biodiversity is critically important for maintaining this. That we think that there's a big link between resilience and resistance in terms of community ecology and biodiversity. That biodiverse systems have a greater resilience than non-biodiverse systems, simply because there's more species that can replace the lost ones, and it comes back to its original state. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
We could go on a bit. Yes, there are other questions. Hopefully,
temptation, because there's lots of fantastic examples of that, but maybe only I find them fantastic. So So
I would like to. Oh, sorry.
It's fine. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
I would like to ask you, because slowly we would like to come to an end, and I would like to. For this amazing talk, and I just want to ask: are there perhaps there's the opportunity for a last question? So please clean up your heads. Who has something burning behind his or her forehead? To have the chance to ask us two amazing experts.
That's cool.
So any question is gone. They are so afraid now. So I think what is absolutely clear, so I just do a bit like in between, perhaps still something will come. It's absolutely clear that it's just a tender beginning of an exchange. And I'm very thankful that you both agreed to this experiment to encounter and talk from this very different direction. And I found it was an amazing, rich talk. And thanks a lot for Brunnenpassage that you made it possible, this talk. And we will go further with other talks like opening up the process of oracle and sacrifice in the woods. I just can say thank you very much. I'm not able to do a resume now, and we can just say we will continue to talk. A warm thank you, and perhaps Fariba, you will do the closing.
Oh, that's really difficult. I would have had a comment or a thought, because zooming out of all these very diverse topics, coming back to art, there is an artist who is doing and developing a performance around these scientific aspects. So just maybe to have one sentence from Douglas and Yohan, how this triggers you, that there is a performance artist integrating this into a totally different language than science. In a way, this is what fascinates me a lot.
I can say from my part, I find this totally fascinating. This is for me another world, and it's really interesting to see. The only thing I can say about performance art is if I teach soils, I expect the students to chew the soil and to feel it and to smell it and to look at it. So I do actually ask them to get into the soil, get involved, to become part of this different system. So maybe that's a sort of a commonality.
Thank you.
True, because it's really like the condition. So with the knowledge you offered also me and us, it's really the way like how to, I think the momentum is how to make you in condition with other elements you are normally not with. And what is interesting, if you leave the constitution of your beliefs, how you think life should function, and perhaps sensations should affect you and thoughts should go through you, if you really take time and you confront yourself with the smell of the soil as watching a leaf or watching how a trunk is growing, it brings you in a totally different understanding of time and the old circular the interdependencies, which I find so interesting. And yeah, that it kicks out, and what we started now, it's like you think, okay, well, we thought about a performance, but it seems now like a lifelong learning process. No, really, with a lifelong learning process with the elements, and also to learn from dear friends or other experts and other landscapes where the belief system, how to deal with nature and also how to deal with time, confronts us so totally with the how to say, the narrow system of what we are used to think how the reality or our environment is constituted. And this is extremely rich. I don't know.
Yeah, I can just kind of, so if nobody wants to add something from the speakers anymore, then I would just say also thank you on behalf of Brunnenpassage also for these new and diverse approaches. And the church is ringing now. So let's come to an end, but thanks a lot. It's it's a beginning, as you said, Claudia Bosse. I'm very curious how the performance and the choir will develop an oracle and sacrifice in the woods. Thanks. And the next talk will be in June. Yeah, early June. Have a good evening and thanks for listening. Thanks to the team.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you, Yohan, for spending your night with us.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Say hello to your kids.
Okay.
The chickens are already
And
up.
the chickens, yeah. We heard the chickens. Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.